Welcome to the MMA Show with me, Adam Catterall. It is a pleasure to be in your company. We are going to take a look back at everything that has happened in the first couple of weeks of 2025 in the world of MMA. Before we do that, though, please like and subscribe this channel because we've got plenty of stuff coming your way. Laura and Dean are going to be giving you a UFC 312 preview of the main and co-main events. I'm going to be getting stuck into what's coming up throughout the whole month of February. But before we get stuck into any of that, I think it's only fair that we get a bit reflective. We look at the start of the year with the big, major talking points, and there's been quite a few that have popped up in the first month of 2025. Let's take a look at UFC 311. Main event, obviously we had a change of opponent where Islam Makhachev ends up fighting Renato Moicano. He throws on the signature Darce choke and gets the job done in the first round, becoming a record breaker in the lightweight division. Congratulations to him. The most amount of title defenses. And statistically, the greatest UFC lightweight of all time, overtaking his good friend Habib Nurmagomedov and BJ Penn and the likes. Now then, the big talking point coming off the back of that is what comes next for Islam Makhachev. Where is the challenge? Now, of course, he was originally scheduled to be fighting Arman Tsarukyan in a rematch, which we all thought was going to be the fight of the year contender. I stand by that, but we've all seen Dana White's comments in the back of UFC 311, where he's basically said, Arman's got to earn it again. He didn't show up. He might have got injured. He's got to earn the right to fight for the title. Now, I slightly disagree. If a fighter gets injured and has to pull out of a fight because of that injury, I don't think they should lose their place in the queue unless somebody else has done something magnificent. And let's be honest, at lightweight, where are the other contenders? Nobody is sticking their head above the parapet and saying, I am next for Islam Makhachev. Everybody that is sticking their head up, he's dealing with him, and he's dealing with him quite well. Now, if Dana's going to stand on what he said and said that Arman has got to earn the opportunity, I think what we've got to do is come up with a series of contender fights to get people excited about what could come next for Islam Makhachev. So on the champion, just park him for a second. He's done the business in January. He's got Ramadan coming up. Have some time off. Have a rest. Sort yourself out. And maybe look to start training and getting back into the full swing of it by May, June. In the meantime, let's book some lightweight fights. We've already got Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. Now, that's an interesting fight because of Dan Hooker's resurgence and where is Justin Gaethje currently at. There's a narrative there with Gaethje, obviously with him previously fighting Habib, so we could legitimize that if he looks good against Hooker. And likewise, Hooker, we could probably legitimize a rematch with him and Islam if he looked brilliant against Justin Gaethje. I know that Islam's already beaten him. I know that he beat him in 2.5 minutes with a phenomenal Kimura. I get all that. I get it. But we're trying to look for contenders for Islam Makhachev at 155. Now then, we need to start booking some other fights. I'll come back to Arman Tsarukyan in a minute. Other options. Max Holloway is talking about coming up from 145 into 155 off the back of his disappointment against Ilia Topuria. He needs a fight. Maybe somebody like a Mateusz Gamrot or a Rafael Fiziev who's looking for a fight, pair them up, and if either one of those looks amazing, maybe that is the next contender for Islam Makhachev at 155. But my front runner is by an absolute country mile, Arman Tsarukyan against Charles Oliveira. I know they've done it already. I know that Tsarukyan came through, but it was over 3 rounds, and I kind of like the noise that Tsarukyan's making. Let's do that over 5 rounds, and let's see what's what. Oliveira, most amount of submissions in UFC history, former champion, got history with Islam Makhachev, of course, wants to get it back against Arman Tsarukyan, who, let's be honest, is probably the best contender already. But if he's got to go through a 5-round process against someone, let's do it against Charles. And then the winner of that surely is the front runner for Islam Makhachev at 155. Now, I know that there's going to be loads of other people claiming, well, Islam should be allowed to go for glory and go for 170. Do you know something? I'm not against that, but there's business to be done at 155 for Islam. I think his relationship with Bilal at the moment would kind of stop that jump. And obviously Bilal has to fight Shavkat for the 170-pound strap. So that business has got to be taken care of. I don't think it's the next step for Islam. I think by the back end of the year, maybe the Abu Dhabi card in October, he could be fighting the winner of Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan, defending that strap maybe again. And then we can look at what comes off the back of that. people are also going to start talking about Ilia Topuria. I'm not against that fight. Makhachev Topuria, I think he's fantastic. What does it do for Makhachev? I don't know if it does a great deal. Does wonders for Ilia Topuria. I think it's a fantastic stylistic fight. I'm all in on it if they make it, but I just think there's other pieces of business to do at 155 for Islam before we start talking about Ilia. And likewise for Ilia, there's business to do at 145. A rematch with Volk coming up, fingers crossed, in April. Diego Lopez on a tear. You've got other contenders like Yair Rodriguez who could get back in that mix. There's a lot of good 145ers, so I think there's business for Ilia to take care of there. Lots to think about. It's not clear-cut at 155 pounds. Not clear-cut for Islam Makhachev. But what is clear-cut is that he's the best fighter on the planet right now, the pound-for-pound number one. That is a list that is ever moving. Might change again when Alex Pereira takes on Magomed Ankalaev in a month or so. But right now, today, Islam Makhachev's the number one guy, and he's the best, statistically, 155er that the UFC have ever seen. He's in the peak of his powers, and I want to see him active. And fingers crossed we can get him back out at least once, maybe even twice in 2025 against a top contender like Oliveira or Tsarukyan. Now, the other talking point that came off UFC 311 is obviously Merab Dvalishvili. What a performance that was against Umar Nurmagomedov. I'll be honest, I tipped Umar going into that fight, and for 10 minutes, I thought I was going to be right because he looked crisp, he looked really good on the feet, and I thought that he took those first 2 rounds. But when Merab puts the foot down, boy, does he put the foot down. What a performance, taking the last 3 rounds, and he took them in style. That cardio might just be the best cardio that we've ever seen in the UFC. It's relentless, punching and shooting for takedowns at the same time. How do you defend against that? It really is incredible. And the same question that I had for Islam now has to be thrown towards Merab because he's defended his title now. Many people say that when you defend your title, you're the legitimate champion. He absolutely is the king of the bantamweights. If you look at the rankings, he's already beaten the number 1, he's already beaten the number 2, and he's already beaten the number 3. Number 4 is Corey Sandhagen, who was taken care of quite convincingly against Umar Nurmagomedov, who Merab's just beaten. And then you've got Davison Figueiredo in at number 5, former champion in the weight division below. The call would probably be, let's run it back with Petr Yan. But I don't think it's that clear-cut. Merab is just unbelievable at the moment. And would a fight with Petr be warranted over 5 rounds for the championship? I personally think that maybe Yan needs one more. And I think that one more should be against Umar. Let's not take away from what Umar did in that fight. He was very good. He's only narrowly lost that fight. And for me, he still is the number 1 contender. He might have to legitimize himself to get himself a title shot immediately. I personally would do Umar against Petr as an eliminator, with the winner of that sticking their head above the parapet to get back in with Merab, who is absolutely on flames at the moment in the bantamweight division. Let me know what you think about the 2 suggestions for the main and co-mains from UFC 311. Get stuck into the comments. I'm sure you've got loads of thought processes of what you would like to see next for those 2 guys. But what we absolutely can all agree on is that Islam Makhachev and Merab Dvalishvili are the kings of their divisions right now. And it's going to be very difficult to dethrone either of them. Now, here's an interesting topic of conversation coming out of UFC 311. Jiri Prochazka versus Jamahal Hill. Again, what a fight. If you love striking, if you love violence, as Jiri Prochazka says, this is the fight for you. And I thought that Jiri Prochazka was absolutely fantastic. If it wasn't for the eye poke in the second round, I actually think he'd have clean sweeped this fight. Thought the eye poke slowed him down and allowed Jamal to get himself back in it. Jiri was cool, he was calm, he was collected, much more head movement, much better defense, and he was so precise with the things that he was doing. Now, can we justify a third fight with Alex Pereira? No, not yet. I think there is a real clear path, actually, at light heavyweight of how Jiri gets back with Alex Pereira. Let's not forget, Alex is fighting Magomed Ankalaev. That's a very, very tough fight. And if Ankalaev wins it, with the run that Pereira's been on, if he wants to stay at light heavyweight, he will have absolute claims to get back in for a rematch. So there might be a logjam for a period of time with the belt. There might not be. Pereira might take care of Ankalaev. And therefore, a conversation opens as to what comes next for him in this division. Does he stay in the division? Does he move up? All those things could play out over the next few months. My concentration now is on Jiri Prochazka because activity is going to be key. On March 22nd in London, Jan Blachowicz is going to fight Carlos Ulberg. Great fight. I think the winner of that fight should fight Jiri Prochazka because that then would determine for me the next contender for the championship. I think Jiri, if he comes through, has obviously got two very good back-to-back wins there. Carlos Ulberg's been flying. Jan Blachowicz, former champion, you can justify it all again. I just think that narrative's really, really good. From a Jamahal Hill point of view, maybe put him in with Khalil Roundtree, who's also just fought for the title. That's a perfect matchup, I think, as well, because he's absolutely not out of this mix. Light heavyweight is really good. Some top contenders. We just got a king that is so dominant. Will he be dethroned this year? I don't know. But that is how I see all that playing out. Put Jiri in with the winner of the co-main event from UFC London, and then the winner of that would then be in line for a shot at the title, regardless of whoever holds that title by the time we get to that particular point at the end of the year, probably. But right now, I don't think we can justify sticking Jiri back in for part 3, given the fact that he's 2-0 down off the back of 2 knockouts to Alex Pereira. It's going to be interesting to see how that main event plays out with Pereira and Ankalaev. A lot of people tipping Ankalaev. We will see. How can you back against Payton? Oh. One downside of UFC 311, Payton Talbott, a guy that I told you to look out for. Wow. Last year, he was sensational, my one to watch. 3 fights, 3 wins, 3 stoppages, looked $1 million. However, he ran into Raoni Barcelos and he got old man. That's the general term for someone using their experience against a young buck. Listen, on the feet, I don't think it would have been competitive. Payton Talbott would have taken care of him relatively comfortable. But this is mixed martial arts. It's not a on-the-feet fight, is it? You've got tools to use in your toolbox. Get them out and get them used. What we found out about Payton Talbott is that there are a few deficiencies in the wrestling and grappling game, of which Barcelos took advantage of and absolutely thoroughly deserves his victory. In fact, the first round could even be a 10-8, couldn't it? He was absolutely brilliant. Back to the drawing board. Dust yourself off, young man. The awe has now gone. Let's see what you're all about. This is the beauty of fight sports. This is where I start to love it. When you get these rising contenders and everything's going well for them, brilliant. But what happens when it's not going so well? What happens when you do get beat? Payton Talbott, I guarantee, is still on the rise to becoming a top contender in this particular division. Might take him a little bit longer now, but we're going to find out a lot more about his character off the back of his first defeat in his career at UFC 311. My final big talking point for the month of January in the world of mixed martial arts was the fight that I told you to keep an eye on. Mr. Nurmagomedov against Mr. Hughes in Dubai in the PFL. Now, this was a historic event because the PFL went to Dubai with mixed martial arts professional competition for the first time ever in Dubai history. And it was a good promotion, solid build. The card itself didn't necessarily pop until the main event. The main event might just be the best fight that I've personally been in attendance for outside of the UFC, and proof that high-level MMA absolutely exists outside of the UFC. Both Usman Nurmagomedov and, of course, Paul Hughes were sensational. From start to finish, elite kickboxing, elite grappling exchanges, brilliant defense, brilliant offense, hearts, guts, determination, and at the end, a boatload of respect. Just a brilliant, brilliant fight. I know that there are people out there that are calling robbery and all this type of thing. Come on, give your head a wobble. It was a very, very close fight. Every single round was close. I have absolutely no arguments with the judges' scorecards. I personally scored it 3-2, which means with the point off for Usman, 47-47. I can see the argument for 4-1 for Usman, with Paul Hughes only taking the 4th round. It was a great fight, but like I said, every round was super competitive. But what I will say is that the scores do not reflect the story of the fight. And I want to see it again. The talking point of that fight is, where is the competition for either of those guys if it is not against themselves? I just don't think it exists in the PFL. Those two, I think, will level up again. They will push each other to new limits. And I think if they do a rematch, it'll be even better than the first fight. And if the PFL do not take that to Belfast, they are missing a trick. The atmosphere will be absolutely sensational. The people of Belfast will welcome Team Nurmagomedov. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They know the fight sports. Yes, they'll cheer their own man and they'll get behind their own guy, but they'll also welcome the elite Team Nurmagomedov to Belfast and make them feel incredibly welcome. Maybe not too welcome on fight night, but throughout the course of the week, absolutely. That is a fight that has to be made. An immediate rematch between the pair of them. Make hay while the sun shines, they say, don't they? And it's red hot right now for the PFL. Capitalise on the momentum of that fight. Capitalise on the momentum of both of those fighters, and especially the way that Paul Hughes is currently carrying himself, not only in the octagon, but on the microphone and on social media. He is becoming a star. Take him back to Belfast and get him a title shot in a rematch with Usman Nurmagomedov. I don't think those lads will let you down. Absolutely brilliant start to 2025. Brilliant title fights in the UFC, a brilliant title fight in the PFL, and Jiri Prochazka shows that he's still learning, still evolving, and could still be a contender at the top of the light heavyweight division. As I said, there's loads of other little bits and bats as well, which we'll talk about at the back end of the year with knockout of the year contenders that happened throughout the course of January. But it set us up good heading on in to February, which leads me on nicely to inform you again to like and subscribe to the channel, because Laura and Dean are going to be doing a preview of Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland. They've got a rematch for the middleweight title coming up in Sydney, of course. And Zhang Weili is defending her belt, and it's Tatiana Suarez that is up and could become a champion. What a story that would be. Her life story is incredible. I'm sure Laura and Dean will give you a little bit of background on that as they preview that co-main event too. So get stuck into the channel by liking and subscribing. Once they've done their preview of the main and co-main, I'll give you the preview of the rest of the fights that are on UFC 312 and what is to come in the month of February. It could be the last one for Dominic Cruz. Hopefully you'll get to hear from him on the channel as well over the upcoming days. Thank you very much for tuning in to my review of January. I'll catch you next time.